Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of our Steelers Summer Podcast. Not that it is summer weather at the moment, but we hope you're all enjoying the off season. And we've got a little bit more to talk about. As you can see, Jonathan Fernley and Pete Spencer join us to look at what's going on in Steelers land. First of all, can I do a blatant advert? The Grand Slam merchandise. It's excellent quality. Honestly, I'll be lucky. I don't buy merchandise. It was given to me. But I have to say, well worth whatever it cost it is. Go onto the Steelers website and have a look. I've got a black one and a white one. Worth a buy. Worth a buy. Jonathan Fernley, Pete Spencer. Pete, great interviews to date. You've been speaking to all the guys coming back. And JJ, I'm sure you've been doing all your maths work about what we can look forward to next season. Pete, it's all starting to come together, isn't it? It's a few more signings, including the latest one of Moo Usela, somebody I'm sure you're happy to have back.
Yeah, they're coming thick and fast now, aren't they? We had that kind of 2-3 week lull, kind of post-season where you kind of have time to rest and recuperate and gather your breath. And now it's kind of 1-2 signings a week. So obviously Moo Usela this week, Colton Sauceman last week, and I think a lot of people are happy to see the various pieces of the puzzle coming back together. The players that we were so excited to see on the ice every year, and we were having chats behind the plexi about who are the players that you're going to want back. And I think that your Kevin Tanzis, your Dominic Cormier's, your Colton Sauceman's, the defense was such a strength last year. But then you add to that the goal scoring of Moo Usela, and bit by bit the pieces are starting to come together now and kind of fall. And what a get Moo Usela was last season. Aaron took maybe a bit of a chance on him, but then you look at what he ended up producing, and it's great to have such a young player back as well. Colton Sauceman, we were talking about his kind of statistics as he was coming back. I mean, plus 22 in your point, plus minus in terms of the points. And then he had another plus 10 in the Challenge Cup and another, what was it, plus, I'm just looking at plus 7 in the playoffs. I mean, they're great statistics. And from a guy that's just going to, carry that first power play unit and quarterback it the way he did. I mean, I think I tweeted that he was second overall for defenseman in point scoring. So he had 50 points in 68 games, just one, I think Marcus Crawford was the first overall in terms of defenseman, but Colton Sauceman, your second top offensive defenseman in the league, really. So another great one to get back.
He's taken every stat off you there, JJ, in one answer. Every stat. I think...
Got to get him in when I can.
Yeah, always important just to get a core back. And perhaps that's how I looked at it, that we got a good core back. And it seems that Aaron has been able to bring a good core back, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. I think the thing with Usela is that he was never perhaps the star name of any line that he was on, but that secondary scoring was so important for the Steelers this season because everybody was able to contribute, and it meant the team never went into a slump. The previous season's team was a bit top-line heavy. When they struggled, the whole roster struggled. But Usela provided goals whatever unit he was put on and whichever line mates he was with. And the majority of them were 5-on-5 goals. He's not padded his stats with power play goals. Only Robert Dowd scored more even-strength goals than Usela did. So when you're sort of playing the game that we'll play once the roster gets a bit nearer completion, who's going to go with who, Usela can slot in anywhere, as he did most of last season.
Pete, as I see it at the moment, Tanzi, Cormier and Sauceman are the three defencemen that have been confirmed. Dowdy, Cole, Mark Simpson and Moo Usela. I'm being very careful there to read off my list because I'm looking at a list here that's got a couple that haven't been on. But I think, as JJ's just said there, that core's a good core. We'd have all taken that as we were driving home from Nottingham, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we certainly would have. And you look at the teams that have been successful year on year. I mean, I've quoted before, your Belfast teams, your Cardiff teams that have had that continuity and just added a couple of pieces here and there have been the successful teams. And obviously Aaron, a few years ago, completely overhauled the squad and kind of started again from scratch. And now he's found those players that have been proven to secure the first Grand Slam in 23 years. You want to bring as many of those pieces back as you can, obviously keeping within budgets and all that sort of stuff that Aaron will be calculating in the background. But I think, you'll probably come on to mention this later on. some of the two-way deals that Aaron's done with the Steel Dogs as well have just been really interesting, and it's been interesting to chat to Aaron about the way that those players are going to be used, bringing them up and up, not just the British players as well, but there might be the potential for a bit of that with the few imports that the Steel Dogs end up getting as well. So a really interesting development there with, and what we've wanted to see for so many years with that kind of farm team as well.
Mm-hmm. JJ, you spoke about Usela perhaps going under the radar a little bit. I think the same could have been said for Mark Simpson for the first part of the year, but he just came and he was a stud, wasn't he? He was a horse. He was outstanding pretty much all through the year, and it was so unfortunate that he missed those final couple of games injuries.
Yeah, it felt like earlier in the season he was sort of wasted on the fourth line. You kept seeing him take shifts and thinking, wow, he's good. He needs to play more. We need to get him more ice time. But the other lines were just so productive, he couldn't quite sort of fight his way up. But every line he played on, he made better. And the Steelers were so strong at face-offs last year, and Simpson was such a key part of that. And the Steelers had built themselves in previous seasons about being fast, quick in transition, quick skating speed, goal after goal after goal after goal, no let up, relentless. And the team was perhaps a little small, so the extra physicality that Simpson brought, and he's not sort of, the most notorious net front presence the Steelers organization has ever had. He's not the best battler in the corner, but just having that big bloke up top, I think really added a different dimension to what the Steelers were offering. Because at times in previous seasons, we've maybe been a bit one-paced and a bit one-dimensional, however effective and exciting it was at times. Simpson just offered that something a little bit different. Plus, ace penalty killing, yeah, he's a great pickup.
Yeah. Players coming in, but another player goes out. In the last episode, Pete, we spoke about Nicky leaving us. We spoke about Brett Newman leaving us. And Tony Maron has also departed. He's gone to a DL2 club. He gets his chance to be a starter. I don't think we can begrudge him that, can we?
Yeah, he gets a chance he's been waiting for all season, and weren't his statistics just fantastic for the Steelers? I mean, didn't lose a game. He was just a stud, really, wasn't he? Everything you can want from a backup, really. Never complained. Great when he came in, and the games that he kind of came in for as well. Great statistics as well. I think amongst netminders that have played more than 11, 12 games, he had the best statistics in the league. So, a great pickup for that DL2 team. And Aaron's left the door open, never say never. He could be back at the club one day. But just a great character. And when you're looking at guys that are trying to keep it light, the guys that aren't playing as well, Dowdy did a great job of keeping those guys involved. Went over to Tony Maron after the Challenge Cup final, got them straight on the ice, and they were as much a part of the team as anyone, really. So, big character in the Steelers locker room. Obviously, a big miss going into next season. We want someone that's going to be able to give Greenfield a rest and that we know that we can trust if, the worst happens and he does go down injured. So Aaron's got a real job on his hands trying to replace Tony Maron now.
Those players like Tony, JJ, Vanell as well, I think, that spent so much time on the sidelines, but somehow they were made to feel a really integral part of the team. And therefore, it wasn't a John Terry moment when they put the shirts on and went on the ice. It was expected, and you were happy that they were a part of that because they all did their job. But Young Harper as well.
Yeah, it was very much a team first ethic all year because the Steelers weren't just relying on one or two superstars to get the job done. Everybody had to step up and have their moment, across the 70 games. It's going to be really difficult to replace Maron because had he been able to come back to the Steelers, we have that proven quality. We know how good he can be. Fox will do his homework, of course, on whoever comes in that role, but the first part of the season is going to be such a busy time for the Steelers because you'd feel that the number one is going to get those Champions Hockey League games, and then we're straight into the league season and those Challenge Cup games, more Challenge Cup games now in the group stages, extra pressure on qualification. You can't be sure you're going to go through if you don't win most of your games. You still want to get that top seed for home advantage. That reserve goalie, that number two, is going to have to play a lot of important games in mid-September and October. There won't be a chance to ease them in. It's a really important acquisition for the Steelers. Maron, we'd love to just plug him right back in and get a few more guaranteed wins, but I think there's going to be a lot more action for the number 2 goalie in the early part of the season compared to last year.
But Pete, if we were here tonight on this podcast saying, what great news, Tony Maron has re-signed for the Steelers. If we were all brutally honest and if we all injected ourselves with the truth jug, wouldn't we have said, oh, shows not great, it shows a bit of a lack of ambition that he didn't want to go on. He was happy being a backup. And he did such a great work that I think he's actually done the right thing going to Germany. And if he had have come back, we'd have all loved him to come back. Of course we would. But I think there would have been a knock on him that, blimey, you're happy playing 12 games a year, 15 games a year, Tony? Nobody can be happy playing just that, can they?
Yeah, 16 games a year, 16 wins from 16 starts,
Yeah,
1.8. 1.82 goals conceded a game. Yeah, he's done really well. But we talked about the fact that he is young, he is ambitious. He's only 25, so goalies tend to get better with age up until they get to that kind of 30-year mark. So he's got plenty of miles left in the tires. And like you said, this has given him a great platform to go on, to get a move, to get experience, to see how far he can go. And then, like I said, Aaron's kind of left the door open on that front as well. So we wish Tony all the best. We hope we see him back in Orange someday. And in the meantime, we look for the next netminder to come through the door.
And JJ, Aaron can go to these other netminders now and say, hold on a second, look, there is a pathway. You come in here. Yes, okay, you've got to learn your ropes. But look what's happened to the guy who came in last year, Maron. He's gone to DEL2. You come in and do a similar job as Maron. You may end up in Denmark. You may end up in Germany. You may end up in Italy or wherever it is. And you can at least show there's now a pathway that if they emulate what Tony did, that they too can move on.
And with the extra games the Steelers are likely to have this season, it's a potential to say to a new recruit, we can't just say you'll have 16 games. You may have 25 games as the season progresses. Had the Steelers not been on such a great winning run as they were, I think we might have seen some more games from Maron. But it was so easy for Fox to say, same again, same again, same again, particularly towards late February and into March, as the Steelers were getting really close to that cup final and the final league game that clinched the title. Just didn't want to upset things by making a change. And, if we lose now, what if the rot sets in? Just kept everything the same. Had we lost another game back in February or January, I think Maron would have played a few more. So it's a really attractive opportunity for a netminder to come into a club where the vibes are so good and the opportunities are going to be there. You've got, 10 Challenge Cup group games? I think you're going to get 6 or 7 starts in those if you're coming in as the netminder. And if you're winning those, you're getting the quarterfinal, the semi-final starts and maybe even the final as well, because Fox has shown that if you play well, we'll keep you in the lineup.
Pete, talk to me about the Sheffield Shudras, as we seem to be discussing, because, crikey, my job has gone from just reporting on the Steelers now. It's the Steel Dogs as well, and they're becoming a bigger part of us, as we thought they would, and perhaps as we always had hoped, as a club, to build this new world, this modern-day world pathway. But actually, even I'm getting excited about the Steel Dogs, and I've never been excited about any other hockey team other than the Steelers, but it's interesting to see these kids coming back to Sheffield who have left Sheffield because something was wrong, and now they're coming back, young Warburton, Norton, and it's quite interesting how this is all being kind of put together. And I don't expect to see a great deal of players from this year's Steel Dogs team, playing in the Steelers, but you can see that's where it's going to go over the next few years if it continues like this. And I know you've spoken to the guys as well. It's been quite an interesting little project, hasn't it?
Yeah, we had Ben Morgan on BBC Radio Sheffield towards the end of last week, and a lot of the conversation was about that pathway. And I know that that's the reason that he's brought Stevie into the lineup as well as the assistant coach, part of the remit there is to create the next pathway to bring local talent through to be professionals at the Steelers. And you can see that the players that they've brought back in, your Curtis Warburton, maybe it was a conversation last year where Aaron was kind of saying, if you hold on, there might be something better for you at the Steel Dogs than if you go over to Solway. But he couldn't hang on last year. The deal came so late with the Steelers that Curtis had to make a jump and had to secure his future and get that sorted for his own career. But he's gone away, he's got starts, and now he's come back. And the remit really has been for Ben and Stevie to bring the Sheffield talent that we've spent so long nurturing in the Sheffield Academy and worked so hard on, bringing those players back into fold. And we've seen Nathan Ripley coming back, having played at Coventry and played at MK. We've seen Ben Norton, a Sheffield lad that's gone away to college, that's come back, that's a GB under-18s, under-20s netminder now. Aaron's talking about, one day, can Curtis, can Ben Norton, can they be British starters in the Elite League? That would be the goal and the aspiration. And we've seen what Cardiff have done with Ben Bounds from that point of view as well. And then you talk about Tate Shudra as well. I mean, what a breakthrough year Cole had, and we've spoken about it so many times throughout the season on the podcast. But, you bring through 19-year-old, another Shudra off the production line, and, he had some games for the Dogs last year. And I think Ben Morgan was saying that actually he showed a lot of promise, and actually he's excited to see Tate kind of kick on from where he was last year. I mean, 6 goals, 11 points isn't going to set the world alight from last year, but we know that there are issues with the Steel Dogs last year and getting things up and running. I think we're going to see Tate play a lot more minutes and get a lot more points and goals coming into next season as well. So it's really exciting to see where the Steel Dogs are going to take themselves to. Ben says they're not there to make up the numbers, so they're potentially going to be kicking back on, going to be back into contention for some trophies, and that can only be good for the Steelers when you look at bringing through the Finley Oryx, the guys that are going to get the experience. And when the Steelers need a body, Aaron Fox can just dip down into the Steel Dogs and say, I'm going to have Finley Oryx for tonight, I'm going to have Nathan Ripley, and they're going to get blooded into the Elite League as well. So I think it's really interesting, the approach, and it's what we've always wanted to see from the Steel Dogs and the Steelers, working hand in hand together. Ben and Aaron have got a great working relationship from years back, so excited to see both clubs kind of kick on with that relationship as well.
Just before I come to you, Jonathan, back to you, Pete. You said that Ben was in your radio studio. Does Radio Sheffield, does the Sheffield Star, does the Yorkshire Post, do they take more interest in the Steel Dogs now because of their connection with the Steelers, and they also can see this connection and it's something exciting and something interesting? Would Ben Morgan have been on your show if it had been independently owned and in or is it more so now because there's a whole club that you see?
Yeah, I think it's people can see that there's that association, and I think there is more interest from people when I'm putting out these kind of signings and they're on the two-way deals. I think there was the level of interest there before, and certainly during the lockout, not the lockout, the lockdown. There was just a grasp for hockey, and we kind of dipped our toe into the Steel Dogs then, and obviously they were at a different stage in their development. But now that there's that association between the Steel Dogs and the Steelers, I think there is that extra level of interest. You only really have to look at the kind of analytics behind Twitter, and we look at the likes and the retweets and all that sort of stuff. There's a bit more of a buzz around the Steel Dogs, certainly going into this year. And I think a lot of people are seeing that development and seeing the pathway and saying that actually it's worth kind of keeping an eye on the club in the National League, because one day these could be names that we need to be across. We need to know where they come from. And I think people in Sheffield get excited about people from Sheffield doing well. They want to see their own doing well. And I think now we're bringing the local players through. There's the pathway. Little Jimmy going down to the ice rink can see potentially, I could be playing for the Steel Dogs. I could be playing for the Steelers one day. That's what it's all about. That we've talked about it for years with those Swedish clubs. You walk down the corridor, to the left there's the under 11s, then the next door is the under 12s, then the next door is the under 15s, then the next one is the affiliate team, and then the door right at the end of the corridor, that's the SHL team. That's where you can get to if you continue on the pathway and continue up the corridor.
I think every city's like that. Crikey, I live in Birmingham, and this city at the moment has got one face across the whole of the city, and that's young Bellingham, because everybody here, Bellingham's a Birmingham lad, and everybody's full of Bellingham right now. And in a smaller way, young Shudra, young Norton, all these lads are going to do the same. JJ, you've always been interested in the Dogs. You've covered them for a lengthy period of time. But I think from the Steelers' point of view, it's good for us to be able to promote them, promote the individuals, because hopefully one day they are going to become Steelers. But also, we want our Steelers fans to go and watch them when we're on the road as well. And having that connection and that interlocking is vitally important, is it not?
Yeah, there's so much entertaining hockey played at that National League level. If you have been going to watch Milton Keynes or Leeds or Swindon in the last few years, you've seen terrific hockey, you've seen great entertainment, you've had a cracking night out. If you've been to the Steel Dogs in the last few years, it's not been great. There have been moments, but it's largely been slow. It's been lower scoring, and there haven't been the reasons to get excited. A couple of seasons ago, it was great because you got Alex Graham there and you could dream on what Alex Graham was going to be. And then he'd get called up to the Steelers and you'd see that, yeah, it's justified, it's real. This season, you're looking through that squad and thinking, these players are in their mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s. Where's the future? You look at the roster now, it's only got half a dozen names on it, and you're thinking, oh yeah, I like this. This is just going to get better and better and better. These aren't players hanging on for a last payday. These are players who want to take the next step. They're not going to have a night off because they just don't feel like it today. They're not having a night off because they're working. These are players that are driven and want to take it to the next level. We do love supporting, one of our own. We've not just got one of our own. We can have a team of people like that. And I just think the entertainment level at the Dogs this season is going to go through the roof. Will they be good enough to catch, Leeds and Milton Keynes and what have you? Who knows? But I tell you what, it's going to be a lot more fun than it has been in the last couple of years. I think the Steel Dogs crowds are going to be terrific this season because I think they're going to get entertained.
I'll come back to that. Will they be able to compete at the top in a second? Friday, there's another very interesting young name, which is really going to be. He's a name I never thought would wear a Steelers shirt, but maybe by the time this comes out, that name's already out there. But we'll leave it. Tell me though, what's the aim of the Steel Dogs? Is the aim of the Steel Dogs to challenge Milton Keynes and to become champions of the National League in the next 5 years, or well, in fact, I'll pose this question to you both. What would be more important? That in the next 5 years, the Steel Dogs win the playoffs once and the league once, or that they finish mid-table for the 5 years, but two players that are in the Steel Dogs team this year are regulars in the Steelers team in 4 years' time? What would be the biggest success there? Because I'd go for the second one. Okay. Now, I'm sure if Tony's watching this, he's going, no, David, no, we want them to be at the top of the league so the crowds are better. And I get that. I get all that from a business point of view. But what do you two? We'll start with you, Pete. What if I offered you those two scenarios? Win the league once, win the playoffs once in the next 4 or 5 years, or two players become regulars in the Steelers team in 4 years' time? Which one would you take?
I'd probably take the second one like yourself. I'd pose a slightly different question, though. How many of those Steel Dogs players would you like to see wearing a GB jersey in, say, 5 years as well, having come through, having played Elite League, and then kicking on and replacing some of those names in GB as well? Because that's the ultimate pathway, isn't it? And I know that people that are interested in the Steelers will focus on the Steelers. But if we're going to take ice hockey in the UK to the next level, a successful Great Britain program that attracts more investment, that attracts more interest, that attracts more national headlines as well. And then it's that kind of trickle down process, isn't it, really? So it'd be great to see, as you said, two players out of the Steel Dogs roster this year breaking through. We can already probably point to who that may end up being. There may be a couple of surprises along the way as well. There may be players that come through, in season 2, having seen what the Steelers are already doing. But I think the ethos of the club being about development and that pathway is only going to attract back better players to Sheffield, better players to the league, and ultimately the better players to the Steelers. So it all kind of filters up.
JJ, which option do you take?
I take option 2, but I think the two of them go hand in hand because I think Aaron Fox is going to want to see that these players can cope with the pressure of the big games. So by being in playoff finals and winning them, he'll then know these players can thrive under pressure. They can produce performances on the big stage. The Steelers were down to 2 lines in that playoff final. They might have liked a couple of extra Steel Dogs players to pump out the numbers and provide a little bit of extra support on the end of that game because there was nobody left on the bench that was fit and healthy. So if they can be winning trophies, it's going to make it an easier decision for Fox to call them up. But in terms of the crowds, yes, fans will turn up for a winner. But if those games are 2-1 wins, with defensive trap hockey, the fans won't enjoy that. But if they're playing exciting, entertaining games, and okay, if they lose it 5-4 because Kieran Brown scored a hat-trick or Liam Stewart scored a couple, the fans will go away thinking, I've had a great night of entertainment tonight. So I think the crowds can be up without the Steel Dogs being winners. But if they're going to make it up to the Steelers' level, they're going to have to prove that they can win at that level.
Yeah, the point I made, Pete, was like, Ulrich and Ripley are the two, perhaps, if you like, guys pushing this year. But maybe it's a 16 or a 17-year-old kid that's going to be in the team this year. Maybe Chung Tate, that then forces his way through because he's been given that opportunity a little bit younger than perhaps he would have been elsewhere. It would be fantastic to see the Shudra Brothers in the same lineup, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Next to Jonathan Burnley will be his dad commentating on Tate to Cole to Tate to goal, and just to see what his dad's.
There you go. You've given Jonathan a line already for hopefully a couple of seasons time. It'd be great to see.
Because that name's synonymous with us all, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was our introduction into Ben Morgan on Friday. Obviously, Tate Shudra had been signed that day, and it was the Shudra name is synonymous with Sheffield hockey, and let's hope it continues to be. It would be great to see some of these players breaking through, as you've alluded to. I wonder slightly as well whether or not Sheffield taking this step now forces other teams to look at this. I mean, Paul Thompson years ago had talked about that under-23s development league, but actually, if Sheffield are pushing in this direction, does this then force Nottingham to create a partnership with the Lions? I know Coventry have got an NIHL subsidiary team as well. Does this then force your Manchester Storms to some of their academy products are going to be starting to come through as well?
Does it? At the moment, there doesn't seem to be an appetite elsewhere. I just wonder
if this move does if other clubs start to get their house in order and start to move in that direction. It's just a ponderance, or do we stick with where we are at the moment in terms of the import limit as well, and just having 5 Brits per team, because obviously that then creates a pathway clog almost. Are these Brits, if they're good enough, going to then look elsewhere rather than necessarily taking that natural progression up to the Steelers? This move by Sheffield then creates other potential, either problems or opportunities for other clubs.
JJ, thoughts?
I think once other teams see the Steelers having success with it, if they do have success with it, that'll force their hand. If the Steelers don't get a lot of success out of it and the Steel Dogs are finishing mid-table, they're not competing, and we don't see players called up, we see the Steelers choosing to skate with 18 rather than 20 because there's no point having this kid on the bench. I'm not going to use them in any situation. Then if this experiment doesn't work, I'll call it an experiment exactly, but if the Steelers aren't getting what they want from it, other teams aren't going to follow. But if the Steelers see Nathan Ripley being called up, being given third line minutes, getting 10 minutes of ice time, picking up a goal, picking up an assist, and then going back to the Dogs and having success down there, they'll be thinking, yeah, we should be bolstering our squad like that. So I don't think you'll see other teams copying immediately. It's more of a wait and see, I think, from other clubs.
Okay. I think we've just hit the 30-minute mark there, and we've managed to get through the whole episode without Dave Burnham yawning, which was a big advantage on our last episode. Anything quickly before we go that you've seen elsewhere, Pete? JJ, start with you, Pete. Is there anything that's caught your eye anywhere, or am I just dropping that one on you?
I haven't kept across all of them, but just a couple of names that I've obviously Fife have made a bit of a splash with signing up Martin Latal, and then they've also brought in a couple of Continental Cup winners as well. That trio of signings that they announced the other day. So people in Fife getting rather excited about some of the names that have been brought in there as well. And we wanted to see what Fife were going to do with another season under Tom Coolan as well. So it's interesting to see the moves that he's made already. Obviously, Nottingham have brought back Sam Hare as well. And Carl Osterberg as well, who was so good up in Scotland, has moved across to Belfast. So just a couple of kind of marquee signings and moves from certain teams there as well.
What were your thoughts on her going to Nottingham, JJ? He had a dominant year, didn't he? But it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, it took
when he was in Nottingham.
He took Nottingham to the dizzying heights.
He took the league by storm, didn't he?
Yeah, they finished 5th when he was there. So fingers crossed they can achieve those dizzying heights again. No, it's a great pick-up if he's the player that he was then. Yeah, sure. No, the other thing I wanted to add was
Osterberg.
Let's go to Guildford.
Osterberg was an interesting one, wasn't he? Yeah, Tedesco Guildford, yeah. But I thought Osterberg was an interesting one, JJ. There's lots of players that play with all due respect, the bottom clubs, that sometimes then when they go to a top club, they don't have quite the success. It's very different. There's a bit more pressure. There's a bit more structure, where perhaps in Fife or in a Dundee, they can just go and they can just, be totally offensive. Do you think he'll be a success with Belfast?
It depends on what your expectations are for him. If your expectations are 30 goals, 65 points, no, don't expect that. But if your expectations are, here's a guy who's shown he can score against every elite league team, we're going to drop him on our third line, so we've got that depth scoring that we maybe haven't had as reliably as we needed to in the last season, then yeah, if your expectations are 15 big goals to provide depth to your main top 6 forwards, it's a great pickup. We've seen some players, if you try and take a first liner and drop them onto your first line, you think, better players around them. It doesn't always work. But if you take a first liner, put them on your third line, that can be where you have success.
And JJ, lateral to Fife, I think we all like Martin, didn't we? Martin was a very good player. We liked him. He was all good. But is it a year too long for him? Is give it up, or is he going to make an impact?
I really hope he makes an impact because he's such a nice guy and he deserves success. But as Pete mentioned, those 3 Kazakh kids that they've picked up, Nomad are always a difficult club that anyone struggles with whenever they take them on in the Continental Cup. So they've got quality if they're coming from there. But that's actually the sort of dice roll that Fife should be taking. If they are as good as they might be, they could have a terrific season. And if they don't, okay, let's bring some new ones in. When you're one of the teams at the bottom, you can afford to roll the dice, try and hit the jackpot. And I think Fife might have just dropped on with those 3. A couple of them in particular look really, really dangerous. So there's a chance that, I don't say Fife could be this season's Manchester, but they're pitching as though, just scraping into 8th. Fife are looking as though they've got higher ambitions than that this season. That's really, really good for the league, not just for the Flyers fans.
Pete, who was the Leicester City centre forward, Jamie Vardy? Vardy, yeah. Arsene Wenger tells a great story about Jamie Vardy. He's available at £900,000, and all his scouting staff are telling him to take Vardy. And he says, if I took Vardy at 900,000 quid, my fans kill me because they want me to spend 25 million, not 900,000. And I guess I can put that into the same kind of as dice roll as what JJ's just mentioned, Pete, that Fife can afford to do that. But if Sheffield, Belfast, Cardiff did that and took a risk on 3, it's too big a risk. They have to almost go for proven, don't they? Where Fife can roll the dice. And if one of those comes off really well, one's as expected and one's not quite as good, it's still a success for them.
Yeah. And Aaron's had this a couple of times with players that he's not taken a chance on. But you look at, we come back to talking about, the flying Finn. Is that a player that maybe he's taken a flyer on at 25, that's had a down year last year in Liga as well? So actually, we've
That
seen
flight that we haven't announced yet.
no, no. So yeah, it's one of those where Aaron's not taking a risk, but there's a couple of signings that, Aaron came into the league at a time where he was looking at a lot of Czech Extraliga players, players that weren't necessarily on elite league players and fans' radars. Your Martin Latau, when he comes in, has anyone heard of Martin Latau? No, but he has a breakthrough year at the Steelers. So there's a lot of kind of, going into other markets. And it's interesting to see that's the direction Fife have clearly gone in. I mean, no one had heard of Italian Daniel Tedesco before he arrived in Guildford. These players have always got to kind of come from somewhere, and they're unknowns to the league, and then they come in and they either make a splash or they don't. So there's always a bit of risk reward in some of the players that come in. Belfast did it a couple of years ago with some of the players that they had kind of scouted from that Friendship 4 college tournament as well. So there are different routes that different teams can go down. It's also interesting, while we're talking about some of the players that arrived, some of the departures as well. Matthew LeMay has retired, obviously having been at the Nottingham Panthers as well. Tyler Welsh has left the Panthers to go to France as well. Cole Sanford has left, I think, to go to Germany as well. So there are players kind of leaving the league, which means that there's opportunities to come through for more players. So this is the time in the season where it's interesting to see where players have come from. I mean, you look at Coventry, they've picked up a guy from Princeton University as well, Nick Seltz. What's he going to do? That's maybe a bit of a risk, and that's maybe somewhere where, Coventry are looking at a few different places. So it's interesting to see where teams are going to for their recruitment as well.
Fans are getting excited, JJ, aren't they? They think it's going to be a bumper year. They can see Belfast loading up, Cardiff loading up. They can see us bringing the core of a Grand Slam team back. And I think they're expecting big things. And Nottingham have got the checkbook out. They're spending, which is good. That's what they should be doing. Like you say, they've got to get back up to 5th. But are you as excited as some of the fans online are about the quality that we're going to see next year?
I am, yeah. And I just need to constantly remind myself that because the quality around the rest of the league is going up, can't expect the Steelers to get as many points next season as they did last season, because everybody else has raised their game. There are going to be many more difficult league games and cup games to be played. But that then also applies to everybody else, because whoever the Steelers' nearest challengers are going to be, they're going to have tougher games as well. So I don't think you're going to have one or two teams pulling away. I think the rest of the league is stronger, that it's all going to get a little more squashed together. And we might see one of those seasons where maybe the top half breaks away from the bottom half, but I don't think we're going to see one team breaking away from everybody, because there's too many teams that have got too many arrows that are going to be firing up at them.
But the counterpoint to that is, when you've got players like, Moo Usela, the flying Finn, coming in for his second season, knowing where the soft areas are, where he can get goals. Mark Simpson's maybe getting a few more minutes. It maybe took him a while to get going at the start of last season. With that 1 year's experience under his belt, does he hit the ground running now? Those are the kind of questions, and that's maybe where the consistency comes in. We all like to see new players coming into the league, but actually those year 2 players, are they in a better position to hit the ground running and to give Sheffield potentially that kick-start early doors?
And that's why I mentioned with her, it's been a while. When we've had players come back to us, Bollebrook, second time around, wasn't quite as good as he was first time. Simpson wasn't quite as good second time as he was first time. There's various across the league. When there's a bit of a gap, do they come back at slightly a different level? And that's, her's on a good ticket there. They're expecting him to be the number one guy, the go-to guy there. So it will be interesting to see how he fares, because JJ, he was outstanding, wasn't he, first time round?
Yeah, he was absolutely terrific. There's no question about that. He was one of the league's marquee players. But yeah, players come back, and of course, by the nature of rejoining, they're going to be a little bit older. But there's also different coaching circumstances, and different teammates around them. So there's no reason that they can't be as successful. These players who are coming back. There's no reason that Mac Carruth, he's 2 years older now, he'll be a little. Well, no, he might just be as good as he always was in Cardiff's goal. So these proven quality players coming back don't necessarily expect a drop off. It might be that their game has developed since they've been away. They may be even better. We'll find out for sure. I can't believe we've got to wait another 10 weeks. I want it to start tomorrow, Dave.
Oh, wish he could. I've just thought of something else that I'm coming to you both. I'm sorry, Dave. We're going to go for another 2 minutes. CHL, 5,000 tickets in 2 days, 3 days. Pretty impressive, Pete. It's going to be exciting. That night against Sparta Prague, the first game, is going to be wow. Yeah. Wow.
I put it to Aaron, and you may not have made the decision on this yet, but whether or not the banner raising happens with Sparta Prague in town, no, I didn't think so. But I put it to Aaron anyway, and he said, if it was, that's that's an intimidating thing to happen on night one first in the CHL, isn't it? But
first legal cup game, I think that will be.
I would have thought so, but yeah, it's one of those I threw out there anyway. They're going to be great nights, aren't they? Bit of a stinker potentially with those the opening away fixtures, obviously going to Switzerland and then down into the back and beyond in Sweden. I don't know.
I think the schedule is horrible, but exciting. But horrible,
very exciting. Yeah. And Mark Simpson and Colton Sorceman were dead keen to play in that CHL, and it'd be interesting to see what a bit of consistency going into a CHL campaign this time around could do. The Steelers have been waiting to get back in that competition for years, so great that they're finally back in that competition, and some interesting European hockey nights ahead of us.
7 or 8 or 9,000, JJ, do you think, for Prague on the Friday? It's looking that way if we can sell 5 in a week.
I certainly think it's going to be, if not sold out, very close to it. Just got to remember how good these teams are. If we signed one of Sparta Prague's third or fourth liners, we'd be delighted. We've got to remember that this is not like playing a Glasgow. It's not like playing Nottingham. It's not like playing Cardiff or Belfast. This is another level. So let's go and have a great night, but understand that we are huge underdogs in this competition. We're in the bottom pot for a reason. We're not expected to win any games. The CHL think we're going to have great crowds and lose nobly. So anything above that is terrific. So, the excitement is already there. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just pull off something special, though?
It would. I remember when Frölunda came into our building and they called us into their office, and we all trotted into their office, and they said, "Gentlemen, please do not think we are disrespectful." And we looked at them strangely and they said, "Please don't think we're being disrespectful, but we've left our first line at home so we can bring some 17-year-olds. And we went, no, don't worry. We don't think that's disrespectful. We came out rubbing our hands thinking we might have a chance, and we realised their 3 17-year-olds were all first-round picks. And I think 2 of them are already in the NHL now. JJ, thank you very much. Pete, keep up the good work with the interviews. Thank you both. Just before we go, just a quick advert. We started with an advert for the merchandise. Also on the screen, you can't see them. Liam here has put a brilliant video together of the Ken Priestley time with all the legends. I've watched it and I did it and I thought it was great and I knew what was coming. So please give that a couple of minutes, because the hours of work that must have gone into that, it's well worth half an hour of your time watching that Ken Priestley video. And also, the shop at Sheffield will be open next Sunday the 30th, between 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. There's a whole range of merchandise. I know you bought everything when it was open a couple of weeks ago, but it's open for one more day. Episode 2 is over. Dave Burnham hasn't yawned. We must have done a good job. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.